Hello.
All righty.
Hi,
I wanted
friends. Hello,
to.
comrades.
Hey, this is Straight Out of Politics. I am your host, Compton Jay, and I have one of my frequent co-hosts here, Liv. How you doing, Liv?
I'm great. How's everyone doing? I'm here on our hump day, making it, surviving. On
Yes.
Wednesdays, we podcast here for Fred Hampton Leftists. So I am excited to join this podcast today. We have one at 5:30. We have one at 8 today, guys. So hang
Yes.
in with us.
Yes, and we may, considering you're in a DM group, considering how many people we have in there, we may need to do another. Sorry, trying to turn this off now.
You
We
got
may
it?
need to do another show because we just
Yeah.
so many people missed the sign up sheet. But anyway, that's an inside thing. But yeah, we got so let's announce that now. Conversations with Leftists, a new podcast will premiere today. After this show, it will be on. So this is I got to translate to Eastern. So this is 3 p.m. So that starts at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Conversations with Leftists is a brand new panel. Some people you've never seen on the network, or maybe you've never seen on camera. Lots of different types of people, backgrounds. So I'm very excited about that show. And then, like she said, we have our original. The show time was 7:30 for the new left podcast. We're moving that back by a half hour to 8 p.m. Eastern, so that there's a little bit of a cushion for our audience to take a break in between the shows. So yeah, that is a great way to start out with. But today's topic is general strike. And we'll talk a little bit about the General Strike Summit later, but that's not the topic of this episode. We want to make an official announcement on the roundtable, or I want to talk about it on the roundtable. As a shout out at the end of the episode, the next time I'm on there. So I'll save most of the information for the General Strike Summit for that. But I did want to talk about General Strike just in general. So for those that are watching, put your questions for General Strike in there. Any comments you have about General Strike, anything you think is important, because we want to talk any and everything General Strike today. To talk about the hunger for it, the need for it, and that is actually the title of today's episode. It's the need for a general strike. And Liv, with this topic, I kind of wrote some things down, so I took some notes here. So let me read this to you. The need for a general strike is at a fever pitch because all other options that Americans have become less and less. All other options that Americans have become less and less effective the longer the duopoly stays in place.
Yeah.
And furthermore, the pandemic made it more clear that American citizens have little power to get elected officials to work for them or for the work for the people. And the pandemic illustrated how government will not help its citizens adequately enough because they are bought off by corporations. So
Yes.
that in a nutshell is why I kind of wanted to talk about this, because the reason I think there's a lot more interest in the general strike right now is because of the pandemic, and a lot more people's eyes were open to the American system, American economic system, American government, and its corruption, and really how American business and government are just almost one in the same. So I think that was on full display because of the pandemic, with the amount of people dying, with our infection numbers being just abysmal compared to other countries. So what do you think? So that would be the first question. What do you think is the cause, or do you feel like there's an energy more than normal around a general strike? Do you feel that? Let's start there.
I certainly do. I don't want to get I'm really excited. I don't want to get too excited and ahead of myself, but I feel like things are really moving. Like we have this general strike coming up on October 15th. Like let's like put all our efforts into that and really work to like get this done. Like that's not far away, guys. That's about a month
Hop,
away.
skip,
Like
and a jump. Yeah.
we're there. So let's start rallying troops and our comrades and really again, as I always like to point out, with the general strike is that synonymous with it is mutual aid. We cannot have one without the other. So while we're starting to work on this general strike, that I would also like to point out, we saw someone actually post in our replies to something you posted today, CJ, was about how like they hope that the general strike that we see is more of like the sit-in style kind of protest that we're seeing, because there's literally all these laws going into place now that are legalizing like running over protesters and killing us. And not to mention all the police brutality that's already happening that we saw that was at an all-time high last year with the Black Lives Matter protests that were happening. And police brutality has only escalated from there. The Capitol Police and other police forces have only received more funding in militarized police gear. So we got to really like rally and think smartly about what we want to do. I do not think taking to the streets is the smartest solution at this point. I think we need to take shelter and cover where we can, welcome in comrades, make your, make friends with your community, really, but like sit in and protest, because the streets are between climate change, coronavirus, the police brutality, the mowing protesters down with your cars. Like, it's just not safe. Like, it is not safe to go to the streets right now. And that's part of the reason why we need a general strike, because it is not sustainable where we're at right now. And we need to fight this.
Absolutely. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I absolutely agree with you. It's this the way the trajectory we're on. I think I'm using that word right. It's not sustainable. Like something is has to give. But this is one of the questions I'm posing when approaching this conversation. The genesis of the general strike. When you're asking yourself, why are we going on a general strike? Why are we thinking about a general strike? And that is, what are American citizens' options to bring about change?
Yeah.
What are their options? So this is what I came up with. I came up with voting. I came up with ballot initiatives. Like you can some things you can get past that way. Lawsuits, like there's lawsuits that can strike down laws if it eventually goes to the Supreme Court or the Supreme Court of certain states. So that can happen. And then I have direct action. Am I missing anything? Can you think of anything that Americans can do to bring about change other than those four that I mentioned?
No, I think you nailed it. I think you got it.
Okay, so then the next question around those same four things: how successful has American citizens been using the options they have to bring about change? So we're talking about the same four things. So let's cover them. We're going to leave voting last because I have a feeling that's going to take up most of the conversation. So let's start with lawsuits. How successful has that been? I would say, it's been fairly, successful in those cases where it's just laws are just blatantly, or in most cases, because not in all cases, but in most cases, laws are just blatantly discriminatory, or in some way, form or fashion, it's illegal and it's struck down. But those cases are far and few between. So I would say that it can be effective, but it's not enough cases to bring about enough change in enough areas. So what is your thoughts on lawsuits in this question?
Well, you're catching me at a very disappointing time with lawsuits, because I believe I just saw an article about how Purdue Pharma is dissolving because of the lawsuits about their contribution to the opioid epidemic. Okay, so where's the justice? I don't want you dissolved. I want way more than that. Like, you going bankrupt, this company going bankrupt is not justice. That is not enough for all the lives they will do is
just reopen under a different name. That's all that's going to happen.
Right?
So
So
that's all they
they're
do.
just going to funnel their money into some other thing and then recreate and pop up. Because unless we dismantle capitalism, and that's, that's a big pharma's role in the opioid epidemic. And now what they're doing with controlling the vaccines and whatever the cures and prevention medicines are going to be for COVID-19. Big pharma is going to have control over that.
Right.
If we do not dismantle capitalism and put in place a single payer universal healthcare for all in the America. And I'm for single payer universal. When I say universal healthcare, I mean the world. I mean universal.
Right.
I don't mean United States, because I mean healthcare is a human right for every human being on the face of this earth.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree. Now, I'm going to just move to the next one. How successful has ballot initiatives been? So we saw one in Florida that, what was it, $15? Is it $15 minimum wage they passed in Florida? I think that was a recent one that passed on the ballot initiative. I think in California, I mean, it was a bad one, but the Prop 22 passed by ballot initiative. So there's possibilities. And I'm not sure, maybe years back that California did pass some sort of pay increase through ballot initiatives. I can't remember. So ballot initiatives they can be helpful, but considering corporations and business can spend lots of money lying about these ballot initiatives to get them defeated. Like, really, how effective can they be? But what are your thoughts on ballot initiatives? How effective are they? How businesses, pretty much spend hundreds of millions of dollars, like in Uber and all the gig companies case, they spent over $200 million to get Proposition 22 passed in California. So what are your thoughts, though, on ballot initiatives?
Well, your ballot initiatives that are on the ballot are only as good as the people who vote for them. So ballot initiatives and voting are obviously interlinked, because it's great to get something on the ballot, but like usually it's a lot of work to get something on the ballot. It's usually like a petition process, community action, all that stuff, community, city councils, yada, yada, yada. But then you need to canvass those people to go out and vote for those proposals and those ballot initiatives. So it's really difficult because you need voter turnout, and we are seeing a record number of voter suppression laws being turned out across the country right now. So that's voting and ballot initiatives are being extra difficult at this point in history right now.
Right, because big money is so against it. So let's move to voting, and we'll leave direct action for last, because I have a feeling that both of us feel that that's probably the best way.
I think that's our only solution. That's
our only way to go. So let's save that one for last. So let's get to voting. I'm going to give you first take on this one, that way, because I have some stuff to say about
I bet you do
voting. So I'm going to go ahead and give you the first take on that. What do you think? How effective can voting be in the United States? How effective has voting been in the United States? You have the floor, Liv.
I think Andrew has quoted it before. I forget who it's by, but it's, if voting was effective, it would be illegal. So I don't think we are going to get, I don't think voting is a one solution fixes all problem for us. I think this is a multi-pronged approach with direct action as well. Because again, there's voter suppression happening. Then it's like, okay, but then we have like, okay, vote for president. Who we have 2016 all over again. Vote for Hillary. Vote for Hillary. Okay, how many people voted for Hillary over Trump? But then we have the Electoral College come in and say, nope, Trump's president. So what the fuck? Abolish the Senate. Abolish the Electoral College. So like,
I think it's funny
that was a big wake up call.
I think it's funny that we call it a democracy when the very highest office is not a democracy. It's not elected. It's not democratically elected. Like, it's only one way to get democratically elected. And that's like, if you ask a foreigner, like, and you tell them, Trump won by popular vote, they'll look at you and go, what do you mean popular vote? And, because we have this, like they're like, well, the only vote there is popular vote. That's the whole concept.
Right?
Of voting is the popular, is the number. So I just think that that was maybe one of the things that the forefathers, along with a lot of other things, they got wrong.
Yeah. Well,
with
I would
that. But
also
go
like
ahead.
to take this opportunity to point out that the Senate and the Electoral College have ties in slavery and
Yes.
retaining power for slave owners. So let's keep that in mind.
Right.
And again, part of the reason why we can't reform it is because of the roots of it. So we should just dismantle and abolish it, because there's no good that comes from that, just like the police, who are evolved from runaway slave patrols. So abolish the police, abolish ICE. But yeah, voting is very, very tricky because, like, okay, so for example, I'm a member of the Green Party, and so like the biggest thing I always get is like, oh my god, why are you gonna vote for your Green? That's such a waste. Like, so when I told everyone I was voting for the Green candidate in 2020, they're like, thanks for your vote for Trump. And I was like, no, if I wanted to vote for Trump, I'd vote for Trump,
Right.
but I don't want to vote for Trump or Joe Biden, because they're basically the same fucking person who is just like a white, wealthy, super sexual predator.
So they came after you online. They came after you online about that.
I'm in grad school. I had a professor of my political economics, political aspects of health class. My professor said to me, when I told him that I was voting for a third party, he said, thank you for your vote for Trump. And I literally was floored. I was like, here's this professor trying to preach like politics, and he's literally going to preach the duopoly to me. Like, gag.
Because it's always theory, never in practice to them. They always want to quote theory, but the theory is never actually practice. So let me give you my take on voting. I don't think people should stop voting. I think you should vote. I think you should vote for people and promote people that you like and think that is fighting for the things that you want fought for. So I'm for that. What I'm saying about voting, though, is that voting is no longer effective voting is not as effective as they teach you in school. It's just simply not. Yes. Because when you have a system based off of who is the richest can run, that right there, you're eliminating the best people, in my opinion. Because I wouldn't say that, the top 10 billionaires in the United States are the top 10 best people in the United States, for example. So I just think that the way our system is, we've made corruption okay. I tell this to my wife all the time, is corruption in plain sight all the time.
Oh yeah.
Like donations from business is corruption in plain sight. Everywhere else on the planet, that's called bribery. When you donate money to somebody, an elected official, it's called bribery.
Yep.
So and it's in plain sight, but we use soft language like donations, like contributions, like, we use that type of soft language in order to soften corruption in plain sight. But because our system allows that, it takes away the effectiveness of voting. Because if you have somebody paying somebody money, I mean, unless you're from Mars, you understand if somebody gives you money, it is a natural human inclination to do things that they want or make them happy or be friendly or be sort of friendly to them or have some sort of bias to them. That's going to be a natural, or I'm not going to say human, a natural American reaction. I'm not going to say a human reaction, but that's a natural American reaction. So, but our political system is telling you, oh, no. For us, though, we can take money and it's not a bribe because we're Americans, because white, superiority, because we're better and white people can do these things and not be bad. And that's essentially what it boils down to me. But anyway, back to the main thing, which is, I think that voting should go from top priority to, fifth priority. And we need to move direct action up to the top list of priorities when we're talking about strategies to get what we want. So voting is do it. I just don't think is as effective because, again, you only could pick between the options you have. So if all the options are bad, are you really voting for the person you want? Like even the people who voted for Joe Biden, if you said who's your first choice, not many of them would say Joe Biden.
No,
because that's not who their first choice is.
Yeah.
So essentially, if your multiple choice selections are all awful, I don't know if necessarily if that's even a democracy or necessarily if you're really voting, like you're really voting for what you really want. So I'll pass it to you. I know I kind of spoke long because I had a lot to say about the voting. Every time I say voting is not that effective, people think that means I'm saying not to vote. So I always have to say that's not what I mean. It's just simply
that's because a lot of leftists do say.
Yeah,
a lot
it's
of
simply
leftists do come out and say don't vote, and I'm like, you can't. That's really dangerous territory.
Yeah, like I wouldn't say not vote. I mean, I would say do what you want. That's what I'm going to say, because if somebody says I don't want to participate, because there are people I know says I don't want to participate in a duopoly because I think it feeds into. I get that. Hey, do your thing, but I personally voted last year for the Green Party, and that's who I'm going to be likely voting for again. I mean, I don't see. I mean, like really, like a person like us, like who do we have really as another option? I mean, another viable option. I mean, there's other parties, but to me, it seems like the Green Party has a lot already invested. A lot of people already know the Green Party. Of the third parties, I think it's the most well-known party by far. So yeah, I'll be supporting the Green Party. So the next question I have for you is, how effective is voting in the American? How effective has voting been for the American duopoly? In other words, how effective has voting been for Republicans and Democrats?
It's been absolutely fabulous for them. It's gone according to plan. Are you kidding me? This is exactly what they wanted.
Yeah, but go ahead. Further dive into that. Like, if they're the ones holding the elections, they're running the elections, and they're the ones saying these are your choices, it seems to me like it's a win-win situation for them, even if a person of the other party wins, because I mean, really, it's not really another party. And then when I'm going to go off on a slight tangent here. When people speak about one party, two party, this is what I say. They're getting money from the same people. So do you think, so for example, Pfizer gives money to both parties. Do you think Pfizer's goals change because the party in office change? Like, do you think their goals change? Like, if it's a Republican, they have a different set of goals. If it's a Democrat, it's a different set of goals. No. That's the reason why it doesn't matter, because the people who are controlling them is telling them the same instructions. That's why it doesn't make a difference. Go ahead if you wanted to chime in.
No, you're exactly right. And this is nowadays, this is readily available information that we can access pretty easily on opensecrets, I believe.org.
Yes.
And we can see where all their funding is coming from. Like, oh my God, look up where all the members of the Fraud Squad's funding comes from, and look at all the PAC donations that they get from. Their only interest is pursuing and perpetuating the Democratic Party and the duopoly. They do not care about us. I don't care if they call themselves progressives. They're not. They are just as, it really sucks because I do think they started out like that. I genuinely believe they started out as like progressive individuals that wanted to believe that they could help reform the Democratic Party. And then they got sucked in with the money. And it doesn't take much else after that, because once you're bought, you're bought. You're going to be bought and sold and produce whatever you're told to produce by Mama Bear. So
Liv, you shots fired. You trying to get some people upset here. You're critiquing the almighty squad. Like, what are you doing? Are you getting anyone angry in the comments here? Let's give it a second to set in. So what are you saying then about the squad and AOC in general? Like, are they more of a prop, is what you're saying?
They are the theatrics of the Democratic Party. They like, look what they just did on the steps for the eviction moratorium. They were sleeping on the steps, having their nice little slumber party when people should have been sleeping in their houses, and having an extension of the eviction moratorium through legislation that they could have proposed and used a block vote for. But no, they decided to do a slumber party on the steps to extend the eviction moratorium for how long? That was to just be overturned, which they knew was coming by the Supreme Court. So we're back to square. Whoa, we're things have backtracked a lot. We're even worse than square one right now because the pandemic has escalated. Right. We are unemployment just ended, which I know we're going to be talking about later today on one of our panels. Like, things are even worse now. And I if I may say so myself, I think things have actually gotten worse under Biden than they were under Trump, which it was hard to believe.
I can't remember what tweet it was, or somebody, maybe you saw the same tweet, but somebody tweeted out that the number of Biden is going to preside over the same amount of deaths coming up pretty soon. Like the number of, maybe it was deaths or maybe it was infections. I can't remember, but like he's going to supersede Trump in one of those areas, pandemic areas. And it's like nothing really has changed with the pandemic. Like if Trump was in office, they were going to roll out the vaccinations. They're the ones who started it with the people. So they were going to do the same thing. So nothing has changed except for mainstream media's projection of what's going on.
And there's not a better example than right now, guys. Just pay attention to what's happening. I know it's hard because if you're watching mainstream media, another picture is painted. But if you are more reserved and you're following like independent journalists and stuff like that, hashtag free Assange. If you are focusing on that and you hear about the general strike, if you heard about the Medicare for All march that's happening, if you knew unemployment benefits were expiring, you're fed up with this shit. And you're like, y'all, squad, what we voted for you. This is what you said you were going to go to, and you're backing out now. Look what's going on. The fraud squad isn't standing for you. The Democrats told y'all to vote for them to save us from the coronavirus pandemic. And look how dark of a turn we've taken with that, and how the vaccine only solution that Biden has portrayed for us as our pandemic's problem solution prevention is in fact quite deadly and has had catastrophic deadly effects, and is going to continue to do so because him and his administration failed to take action, and all the Democrats responsible, because I also want to blame them for the abortion ban that just happened in Texas right now.
Yeah, and I want to touch upon that in just a second, but let's read this here. Running for Congress, nonpartisan. Would love to come on your show and discuss our future. Thank you.
Vote for Daniel.com.
So vote for Daniel. So there goes Daniel. Reach out to Fred Hampton Leftist at gmail.com for that. And the Booker will respond to you. So there you go. Thank you for that super chat. But let's go back here. There was a couple of comments or questions that I saw were pretty good here, and I wanted to put it up and kind of get your thoughts on it. Let's see. One, let's just kind of quickly talk about the October, while I'm looking for this, the October 15th general strike. We did an episode, or at least a segment on this, on a couple of different podcasts, but that's coming up. It's on the 15th. Do you remember some of the details? I know, if you can call out to work, things like
I can
that.
pull it up right now.
Yeah, if you can call out to work, do that. If you're in a state where you feel like you could do that, and of course, stay away from purchasing anything. So make sure you stock up, or if you already have stuff, make sure you plan ahead. So that's, not going out to eat. That's not purchasing anything online. That's not, buying anything, just showing the buying power that somebody has a website here. I'll put it
Yeah,
up on the screen.
I was just going to say
Go
that
ahead.
it's octoberstrike.com. I'm trying to load it right now, but my phone is not cooperating. I just have the error message.
No worries.
But yeah, y'all, it's supposed to start on October 15th. And that's just the beginning. We're thinking, hopefully it's not going to be a one-day event. This is like our demands are going to be met, and that's how long this is going to take. So get ready. Pay attention to finding things about the general strike, because I'm sure mainstream media is not going to say shit about it.
Absolutely
so
not.
Go looking for it, especially on Twitter. It's pretty hot on Twitter, guys. It's been trending really a lot recently. So, okay, here, it just loaded for me. National General Strike, October 15th, 2021, in 36 days, 8 hours, 26 minutes, and 37 seconds. Okay. So the goals is a 25% corporate tax rate, no loopholes, free healthcare for all, 12 weeks paid maternity and paternity leave, $20 minimum wage, which I think is weak, as Dr. Richard Wolff said it should be 44.12, 4-day work week, which I love, and stricter environmental regulations on corporations, bans on single use and microplastics, and limited emissions. Again, I do not think that is enough to remedy the climate catastrophe we are in right now. But it's a start. This is starting the conversation, guys. Like, take advantage of this right now, and like, your friends who just fucking lost their unemployment benefit, be like, hey, yo, what the fuck is going on? And they might have just got a claim saying that they actually have to pay money back to unemployment right now. What the fuck is that about, y'all? What the fuck?
They will have to take me to jail. There's no way I would pay no money.
Oh, honey, I would be in jail.
Money back
I'm not paying money back. Come find me, because I am not paying a dime to you. Which is a side note. I've been applying for unemployment since November 17th, 2020, and have not received a dime. So not only are people still neglecting to actually receive their unemployment benefits that they rightfully deserve and should be entitled to right now during a pandemic, but now we've also just canceled federal unemployment benefits on Labor Day of all days.
So fitting. It's so fitting for the United States to have that happen.
American worker.
But let's take this question here. What is the difference between a political protest and a direct action? I think political protest is a type of direct action. Direct action is the overarching category, and a political protest is just one way of exhibiting direct action. And then this comment, we just need a 10 to 15% block to be powerful. I believe they're stating as far as 10 to 15% of the workforce to go on a general strike in order for it to be powerful. And that is actually not as big as you think. I always say this, maybe we need to start it as a stay away from work kind of movement and then move it into a general strike, because people are already not going back to work. It's over 10 million jobs available. Like, there's been 3 million people that has quit their job 3 months in a row. It was like 4 million one month, and then the month after that it was 3.5 million. The month after that it was over 3 million. 3 months so people are saying forget this stuff now. So we may not be that far from that. So I just wanted to make sure I said that part. Electoral politics is a dead end. That is absolutely what I think here. Or it is. Or I'm not going to say it's a dead end, but it's a small hole.
It's not the only solution. It's not the only solution like the Democrats want you to think.
That's what we have to stop thinking, is that there's a lot of other ways. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about
direct action.
What things do we admire in the past? When we're talking about general strike, what movements do we admire? We admire civil rights movements. We admire the women's suffrage. We're admiring this types of movements. And what movements were they voting movements? No, they were direct action. And that's the point I want to make, is that anything almost, I'm trying to think, throughout, even before American history, it's been an uprising of the people for big change to happen. And that's the only way. So that's through direct action. And that's why maybe that's why they're kind of suppressing, and it's in a constant suppression, and they fear direct action or a general strike in particular. So it's a constant suppression, tying medical insurance to your health care. That's also trying to prevent people from going on strike, because people are willing to lose their job. They're not willing always to lose their health care. So that, they make that an obstacle. Then they do these laws that I think you mentioned earlier. They do these laws where against protesters, you know what I mean? Making laws where you can't videotape police. Like, these are all things that are trying to cajole, I think that's the right word, trying to bring together, trying to gather, trying to herd the masses and prevent them from breaking out. You get what I'm saying? Yep. It's that literally we're cattle, and they're trying to prevent us from getting out and saying, hey, there's a greener pastures. Well, I just thought of this. Like, I didn't write this. I didn't write this. But yeah, what do you think about any of that part, or any part that you wanted to bring up here?
No, I think you nailed it. I mean, we are just replaceable cogs in the system, if you want to get Marxist about it. And that's why they are willing to put us on the brink of working us to death and barely meeting our needs and making our needs so hard to be met. They want us thinking that we need them to survive, to help meet our needs, when the reality is they need us to be doing everything they're doing right now. And we are the ones in control. We have the power, not them. Right. And they do not fear us enough. And that is part of the reason why we need this general strike.
That's because perception over the years has been flipped.
Yeah.
To them having the power instead of us having the power. And to me, it kind of began with the assault on unions in the 60s, in the late 60s. I think it because that's when there was a power shift. That's when there was a beginning where, back then, Congress was more responsive. Your representative was more responsive. Not always. So don't take it that far. I'm saying more than what they are today. And that's because they fear the population more at that time. Unions were very strong. The protest movement was very strong against the war. I mean, very strong. The civil rights movement, all of this was happening. And I feel like we're in that another time now, where just so much stuff happening, where people are like, no way, this is too much. It's time for something, a different way to go. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think you're exactly right. And I think we're also, a lot of us youngins are also relearning what history is, what American history is. And that's really changing our perspective of what America should look like and what people deserve. And it's so an example, you're an African American man. I bet the Black Panther Party has meant a lot to you growing up. But to for me, for a white person, and growing up, that was taught as a domestic terrorist group. They were terrorists. They needed to be exterminated. And we're Fred Hampton leftists. What did they do to Fred Hampton? What the fuck?
Right.
They
just think about that though. Just the dichotomy, the difference in what you were told and what I was told about the same organization.
Yeah.
Just think about that. And that is the difference in America, really. That is the difference. We're being told two sets of stories about the same sort of events, same sort of things that are happening. And I think it does. This is a separate thing. I don't want to make, because it's going to sound like I'm connected, but this is a separate thing. I heard somebody say this. It does a disservice. This is completely off topic, by the way. It does a disservice for America not to be honest with. I'm sorry, let me repeat that. It does a disservice for white America not to be honest with its children, because every generation has to relive the same thing, where there's this sort of animosity towards them, and they feel like, well, I didn't personally do anything, and it's because that the issue is never addressed. Like the stuff is never addressed.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you, or does that kind of sound like I'm babbling?
Yeah, well, it's because it's like, okay, another example. The police. I never thought until like 2020, why do we have the police? Like, how did that start? And a very simple Google search shows you that they started because they were runaway slave patrols.
Wow.
And just the thought that like it didn't even occur to me, like,
right.
How did we have, like, why do we have the police? How did they come to be? And it was all, and like much of American history, it just roots back to slavery.
Right.
And it just blows my mind. So then once you learn that fact, it's like, how do you reform that? Like, you just have to seriously ask yourself and look yourself in the mirror. And when you see all this police brutality happening right now, currently, you need to fucking look yourself in the mirror and say, whoa, what is happening right now?
And Liv, think about this. Liv, think about this. I'm sorry, but think about this.
Go ahead.
People of color, Black people, Indigenous people have been preaching about police brutality for decades.
Yes.
Decades. Yes. How are we still having the same issues? Like,
but you say decades. That's new to me. Police brutality was a new term to me.
Yes, this is
like until Freddie Gray.
Yes.
And I was like 18, 19 at that point. But that, if you are a person of color, if you're African-American, Indigenous, Hawaiian, Alaskan Native, you are born with this. You know this inherently. And it is the problem because white people have such a difficult conversation among white people having conversations, especially leftists reaching out to like people outside of the leftist sphere and trying to plant the seeds of change in others, in Democrats and Republicans and whatever, and people who don't think they want anything to do with politics. White people need to take the responsibility of having these conversations and taking responsibility for history and the inherited benefits we have received from them of white privilege. And until we have those conversations and dismantle white supremacy, we are always going to continually benefit from it. And we're always just going to have this uneven, unbalanced, unprivileged system. So we need to, but it's a big thing for white people to do because they have to talk to each other, and that's just so scary for them.
Yeah, but that's what I was basically saying on that tangent is that all of this racial sort of tension that comes and goes could be completely gone if we would just address the issue and let it be done. Like it's just such a Band-Aid to the situation. But essentially what police have happened is over the years is the whitewashing of slave patrol.
Yes. That is the whitewashing of history.
Yeah. So with movies to make them the good guys, you whitewashing the slave patrol. And now, but the thing is their duties have never changed. What they do has never changed. What do? They patrol people of communities of color and just sit there and bother them and mess with them. That's what they did before. They would go around finding slaves just walking. Show me your papers. Where are you supposed to be working? Take their stuff. That's literally mirrors
not
what
even that
still
sometimes
happens. Like mirrors steals what happens. I mean, just as an example, but there's different things that happen, but it mirrors the same sort of duties that they have always had. It has not changed, and it feels like we're trying to force change upon something that started this way, like what you say. Is it like are we trying to reform? Like, are we trying to reform a molded like banana? You know what I mean? Like, has it decayed so much? Where what do you mean reform?
It's so rotten. Like, what do we do with it?
We can't reform this because it's so intertwined. Like people. And just to piggyback off another thing you said, I'm reading this book called Slavery's Capitalism. I recommend it because it breaks down how much of American culture it derived from slavery. Yeah. And people just don't understand it because slavery and capitalism is almost synonymous in the United States. So when you
Yeah.
say the word slavery, you're saying the word capitalism in that sense. Either way, you can you know what I mean. You can use either one. So I forget the point that I was gonna make, but let's go to this comment here. Direct action threatens shutdowns and defunding via leverage. That is essentially what it does, and that is actually what I recommend. We need to dismantle the Federal Reserve and military industrial complex. Legal bribery, in other words, in the United States, that's known as corporate contributions. That's what that's called. Right. That's what that's called. And I was trying to see if we had any questions. I don't see any questions unless I'm just skipping over them. But let's get back to the topic at hand and let's introduce a little bit more to the conversation. And that's the General Strike Summit that I've been talking about. I've been on a couple of shows, talked about it. I went on Punch Up and talked about it. Went on Hardline Media, Hard Lens Media. I'm sorry, Hard Lens Media, and spoke about it there. Can't remember the other place. Spoke about it on my show. But General Strike Summit, we're trying to put together. Fred Hampton Leftists, which is just basically saying, hey, we're not planning a general strike, but we're saying let's come together and talk about what we need to do to plan one. You get what I'm saying? So it's like, okay, in order for a general strike to be successful, like what you said, I think the number one thing is we have to build out a mutual aid infrastructure.
Yeah.
So that weekend that we're doing this general strike summit, we would talk about what is mutual aid? How do we build a local mutual aid structure in your area? How do you find like-minded people in your area that you can build an infrastructure around? How do we form a national or regional sort of setup where we're communicating, okay, you know, this area is doing well. We're kind of trying to pool resources to trying to make sure everybody's mutual aid structure is functioning or building. You get what I'm saying? So the summit is simply to talk about the things that we need to do in order to plan for a general strike. And this is what I say, and I'm going to pass it to you all the time. We're ready for a general strike. The people who watch this show, the people who follow Fred Hampton Leftists, you, me, we're ready. Like we can go right now. We're ready right now.
Yesterday, let's go.
Exactly. And I understand that. And those people are general strike. Let's go. And I understand that. The problem is we need more people than we have. We need more people than the ones that are very, very hungry to do it in order for it to be successful. We need more. And the General Strike Summit is to answer those questions and concerns to convince more people to join us with a future general strike. So this is not the first step of a general strike. This is more the prerequisite to the first step. So this is like, you know, if you're a university student, this is your 001 class, like your prerequisite. This is not even a 100 class yet. Okay, so this is what we need to do. And so, let me pass it to you. You've heard about the General Strike Summit. What are some of the things you think? I know you mentioned mutual aid, but under the banner of mutual aid, what are some of the conversations? What are some of the questions? What are some of the things we need to talk about within the category of mutual aid during the General Strike Summit?
I think we should take it as an opportunity to re-engage with our communities and really talk about issues that are affecting us and what we want to see and as results. I think we really need to start breaking away from the individualistic nature that America preaches, and we need to get back to a communal society. I think we need to re-engage with that, re-engage with our neighbors and our friends and our neighborhoods. I think we need to start, I think by doing that, it will also help us like bring us all closer together and see that we all like really do have more in common. than we really do think. And I think if you start engaging more with your community, that starts like reaching out and bringing the cultural humility process into play, and people can start reflecting and critiquing themselves on like, oh, I was with this person, I felt this way, and they mentioned this, and they offered this as a solution, and they mentioned this general strike, and this is interesting. Let me look this up. Like, it's all about engaging and planting those seeds of change. Because conversation is where it's at. That's how I'm sure most of us got to where we are. We've had very valuable conversations that have helped lead us here, and we've gained valuable knowledge. So help spread that knowledge to your community. And honestly, the biggest thing, I think the first place you can start is with your family. Start there. Start with your support system, which is usually your family members. Of course, that doesn't have to just be blood relatives, whoever you consider family.
Right.
Start with your family. And go from there and build out and build into your community.
Absolutely. I think one of the most important things, and I think Kit from Hardlens Media said this, and that is he would be on board with the general strike if some of his concerns could be answered. And that, I think a lot of people fall into that category where they're not on board with the general strike right now, but they don't like their employer. They feel like they should be getting paid more. They're tired of working paycheck to paycheck. They don't have health care. Anytime they get sick, they got to get a big bill from the emergency room. So they're persuadable, but we have to address how does somebody, economically survive through a general strike. We have to address how does somebody eat and put food on the table. You know what I'm saying? Like, these things have to be talked about, and solutions have to come up. We have to come up with solutions so that more people who are on the fence will get off the fence and join us for a future general strike. What are your thoughts on any of all of that, or any of the comments that you've seen in here?
I'm going through the comments right now. What's this? A long time ago I learned about Thomas Jefferson and George Washington and lost all my respect for them. When you learn about the founding fathers, that's a bit of a heartbreak after all that history you're preached.
Listen to this one. The general strike would be a get together to plan successive to get there.
To plan successive get-togethers.
Okay. I'm not sure. Do you get what they're kind of saying there?
To have more general summits. Is that what they mean? General strike summits?
I'm thinking so. Yeah, maybe they're from another country.
What are the strike's demands? Here, I have that. Yeah, great question, because I didn't read those. Oops, let me get back to it.
Now, this is the October 15th general strike.
Yeah, I think that's what we're talking about.
So that's what we're talking. We just want to make sure everybody knows that's watching. This is not any other general strike demands. This is their general strike demands. I wonder why people are talking about the DSA. We'll get to that in the comments.
I know.
Why are they talking about the DSA in the comments?
Because I think someone said we should all join DSA. Maybe we should all join DSA and use it to promote actions. Cheese sandwich. Okay, my page is loading. I will say I do not think the demands of the general strike are, dare I say, radical enough. I think it's a good place to start, to have these conversations and say, point things out, that the flaws in our system, and offer alternatives. That is such a pet peeve of mine. When you criticize something and you don't offer an alternative, like, okay, that's great. So like, don't let these people like bitch and moan. Like, say, you know what? I agree with you, but what about this? Like, offer them something, give them something else to latch on to. Okay. Right. So I do think my biggest probably thing with the demands for the general strike is that I don't think the demands for the big corporations, the environmental restrictions on big corporations is enough, because it's not just that. The U.S. military is one of the biggest polluters. Like, we need to be talking about that too. We need to be defunding the military and having that conversation as well. I'm sorry, guys, my phone is still loading.
No, you bring up a good point here, though, and that is, and this is something we can answer or talk about in depth at the General Strike Summit. What happens if people don't agree with the demands?
Yeah.
So do you feel like if we were ever to have a general strike, successful one, so we're talking unions involved, that a list of demands will actually be shorter than longer? Because in order to get the vast amount of people, you don't want to have something on there that will have them say, hey, I'm not part of this general strike vote. Is there a consideration for that, or is just no, these are the demands and whoever's on board for it? So, for example, union participation, let's say one of the demands was to defund the police. There's some unions that may not be on board with that because they have great relationships with police, and some of them like police, and some of them don't view police in the way that a lot of us understand who police are. So that's a point that that's something that we would have to discuss. Like, how is that, like how you deal with something like that. But what are your thoughts? Like, how would, like, we have a union, we have, participation from workers, we have a good amount. You're in the meeting, Liv. You're there, and they come to you. They say, hey, like, how do you work this issue? How do you work an issue where it's something that leftists may believe in, but in order to get unions on, for example, or in order to get some other sort of organization on board, they're saying, well, if you got to take that particular demand, we can't be on board with that demand. Like, what would you do in that case? What do you suggest?
Well, I saw in the comments here, Kevin Twee. Sorry, I'm I pronounced your name wrong. We should just demand to seize the means of productions, or we'll not go back to work. So if we just make that one demand, everything else can follow in discussion. But if we make that first and foremost demand, like, no, honey, tables have turned. We call the shots now. Like, if we make that demand, everything else is in our court. Then we can start making all those policy changes that we want to make that are needed right now. But none of that is going to happen with them still in charge.
I think that if one of the demands is to seize the means of production, I think they would be like, well, it's war. I think they would be like, no way, then it's war for us, because there's no way we're you know what I mean? There's no way we're gonna give us. But before
here.
but before you give your response to that, let's read this super chat. Demand for my part of the general strike. So I guess this cash debit, collateral or income, reverse, don't cancel. Let me see, maybe I read that wrong. Cash debit, collateral or income. Do you know what the point they're making here? Demand for my part. I
think they're saying one of their demands.
Yeah,
but I don't know what reverse don't cancel means.
Yes, that's the part. So maybe they can I don't know, further explain. But thank you for the super chat there. But what were you going to say, Liv, about that last thing that we were talking about? Do you remember? Maybe not.
Sorry, I'm looking at the chats now.
Yeah, that's what I was doing too.
What I was doing before that was trying to get the website to load, and someone actually pointed out in the chat that there's some issues with the website too. So
no worries. But then let's talk more while we figure that out. Let's talk more about the General Strike Summit. Oh, so we were talking about some of the things that we need to address at the General Strike Summit.
Mm-hmm.
What do you feel like? So for example, people let's say they're not Green Party people, because I would assume Green Party people are probably ready for a general
Mm-hmm.
strike. So not not the Green Party friends and family you have, but anyone outside of that, if you have conservatives, what do you think some of those friends, what would convince them? Because I'm sure like capitalism is equal opportunity. So it doesn't matter if you're conservative or liberal or leftist, like it's hard to find a good job. Like you're still getting paid minimum wage. So I think with any reach out, any general strike, we have to come from that point of view. From like we're here as a help, and we're striking also. We're helping, we're building the mutual aid. So
Mm-hmm.
but the question is, how would you convince friends like that? Conservative friends, liberal friends, friends that are not leftist, but they just need that pilot lit. Like the fumes are there because of the dead end job, because of the low pay, because of the, working check to check. What do you think you could say to convince them to join a general strike?
So I think once you figure out, so I guess we can say so, people's weaknesses, what they're really craving right now, what is needs to be fulfilled and met. If you find those and you're like, okay, empathize with it, go from there. And you're like, I see that. Now let me challenge you. Say you're sick and tired of. I'm trying to think of one. Oh, let's say not making a livable wage. Okay, fuck it. We don't want a livable wage. We want a thriving wage. We don't want $20 minimum wage. We don't want 25. We don't want 30. We want $44.12. Thank you, Richard Wolf, Dr. Richard Wolf.
Yes.
$44.12 minimum wage, raised with inflation and everything. Which I would also like to make a point. I love how my tuition went up, but my aid has gone down. So
how does that work?
How does that work?
How does that work?
It's called capitalism.
That sounds very similar to a lot of our lives where our wages are not going up or goes down, but everything else goes up. So for example, pandemic. Now, car prices have gone up. Now, when the pandemic goes away and the labor shortage, or with the so-called labor shortage and the chip shortage go away, do you think those prices of those cars are going to come back down? I don't think so. No. Like once they go up, they stay up. It doesn't matter. Like once they go up. So let's see if there's this comment here. You might as well get the idea of union leadership backing out of your
I think it's important to have union leadership involved in the general strike, but that they do not need to be the set leaders of the general strike.
Oh no, I wouldn't say that. And what if we come into an obstacle where the leadership is not on board? Like, do you still go after the rank and file members? Do you still say, hey, we're doing a general strike? We think, do you still talk to them? What would you do in that situation?
If they seem a little more back on the other side of the fence?
No, if let's say we go to bus driver union A, and we say, hey, we're reaching out, we're thinking, general strike. You guys pay this much in medical insurance for your employees. If you could take that off your books. If general strike, we can ask for a Medicare for all. Give them the pitch and all that stuff. That will be more money for your workers instead of the money that you negotiate for medical insurance. All that money can go to more to higher wages. So it's a win-win. You'll be covered. So all you throw the pitch, but the union leadership is in bed with the Democratic Party, and a lot of them are. So they say no, not with that, because that messes up the Democratic Party, and that's who I'm in bed with.
Yep.
Do we still go after the rank and file members, because they're not in bed with not in bed with those politicians? Do we still go after those people?
Well, as people are pointing out in the comments, thank you all very much. The Taft-Hartley Act actually makes it illegal for unions to engage in solidarity strikes. So that happened. I forget when that happened. I think it happened in the mid last century.
Mhm.
But obviously it was like a target to dismantle unions because they were seeing how powerful they were getting. But now, like, I get like that's part of the it's illegal now, but that's part of the reason why mutual aid is so important, because these union workers, these union rank and file workers need to be able to say, wait, but I still support like this cause and this goal for our union. So I am going to bail out of this union, and I can rely on the support of mutual aid and get by and meet my needs and still advocate for this cause for my union. But that's what mutual aid comes in.
I think the framing that we're looking at is wrong, because if we're on a general strike, aren't we saying fuck it to the rules?
Right? That's my whole thing.
I think that's the point. So I don't see why it matters whatever laws they have. That is the point. We're saying this oppressive state, this fascist state, these fascist laws, these fascist things that you try to keep us boxed in, that's all over. That's the point of the general strike. So, but I don't know if we're going to find a union leadership that's like that. I'm sure we can find small unions, but if you're thinking of the larger unions, the unions that are in bed with a lot of these parties, those are the ones I'm not sure about the leadership of it. But anyway, there's ways to get around that. You don't have to organize it as a union, but everybody in the union can show up, pretty much. You get what I'm saying? Like, that's
okay.
Just legal, easily to get around something like that. So union participation, mutual aid. And I think one of the other, I had this conversation with you and Andrew. I think one of the other legs to a general strike is we have to come from a place of love, is how I think JB or somebody described it that way. That means that in order to get people to come on board, it has to be, what do you need? What does your household need? What does your kids need? What are you lacking? You need bills paid. This is where mutual aid comes in. Helping. Okay. Now let us talk about why you're in this situation and why a general strike is needed. That's the perspective of how we're going to get more people. And another thing about people that are so ready for this general strike is you have to do a little bit of convincing. You have to do a little bit of breaking down the propaganda infused mind that a lot of our Americans have. So there's a lot of convincing that we have to do. Now, I understand the best general strike, or some of the general strikes in history, have been the ones that have been like the ones that have just started on its own. But that means there has to be a catastrophic event that kind of precipitates that. But lacking that, then I'm saying this is the way we have to go. Now, the George Floyd murder was the closest thing in a long time where I really thought this could really roll into something huge. And like, as far as a general strike or some sort of movement. And I still feel like we're not, the temperatures is not that high, but it only can take a very small amount to push it back up, like another sort of just horrific killing caught on camera. Anything like that, I think could turn it back up. So my point is, barring anything that could light such a fire under a lot of people, like the George Floyd killing, then there has to be a planning out of these things, a talking, a meeting of the minds in order to plan something as big as this. It's not simply just making a couple of flyers and saying, hey, with your other leftist friends who are also hungry, let's go do it, and then it's done. It's just, it's not that way. Is there any comment there you're seeing? I'm seeing you reading some comments. Is there some? You see some good ones there? Let's put this one up. I support the general strike, but we, like, years away from being able to pull it off realistically, if you got BG, what the minimum wage should be that most people. This is actually exactly what I say. The first part. I feel we're realistically several years away from planning a general strike. One, you have to build a infrastructure, a mutual aid infrastructure. That takes time.
Mhm.
We're not rich where we can just go out and buy, $10,000 worth of, items. So it takes time to build up said stash. And I think 3 years from now, just think about it, Liv. 3 years from now is what? Is the presidential election. Why wouldn't that be a very, very opportune time to have a general strike brewing at that time? So I agree with part of that comment. General strike fund, yes. Yes, if anybody didn't know what the BJG meant, stood for, that is what it means. Brianna Joy Gray. Although one of those N's is spelled with an H. The first N there should be an H, is how she spells.
Yeah, I want to point out, we don't have several years to wait in the comments. Thank you. That we have an urgency.
Oh, who said that? Let me see.
I see Hondo 64.
And oh yeah, now I see it. Let me put his comments up there. And I feel the same way. I feel waiting means that a lot of people, more people are going to die. I mean, a lot more people are going to suffer because we're waiting. But the alternative is if we get out there on a general strike with the people who are ready right now and hungry and willing to go, it's not going to be effective to bring about change. It's not going to be large enough to bring about a change. And unless anybody else, maybe you see it differently. And if you do, please, make your case in the comments, and we will put it up because we want to include our audience in this discussions. Any other good ones to see? But let's put that there. Illegal strikes forfeit all protections. Yeah. Yeah. And you notice, and you like that illegal strikes forfeit all protections. Do you think that law that does that, or those laws that do that, is intentional so that you do not general strike? Like we were saying earlier, there's a lot of things in place in the system, one of which we pointed out earlier, which is connecting healthcare to work or to employment. That's another obstacle to a movement like this, or to a workers' movement. These are things put in place so that you don't do what everybody knows we should do, which is going in general a strike. Let's see if there's any other ones here. Let me see if this one. A person with a felony was not strike unless they're and this is what I'm saying we need to address. This is what we need to address. There needs to be a strategy for that. There needs to be a strategy for this. There needs to be answers for this particular point. That what is that name? I can't see. If you could say the name, you can shout it out.
Mr. Methuselah.
But yeah, let's see if there's any other points here. I saw that one.
Lots of good comments. Thank y'all.
Let's see this one. I love you all, and I want you all to have Medicare for all. Me too.
Radical love. We want you all to have health care. Health care is a human right.
Let's see here. They enforce it by funding military gear for police.
Those protections we get by working for the man. Yeah.
Right. Like, why on earth would a local police force need military gear?
I don't
for what?
know.
That is insane.
And why do cops need to wear a bulletproof vest, a gun, a taser, pepper spray? How do do you feel when you get pulled over, Jay? Because you're a black man. Like, I feel like you've always dealt with this, the fear of the police. And for me now, as a white woman, I just get fed up and fucking sick of this shit and disgusted, and I immediately feel unsafe when I have a police officer, an armed police officer, approach me like that. Like, it took a while for me to like connect those dots and be like, why? And this makes me feel unsafe, because like for so long white people are told the police are there to protect you. But like,
what's happening where you need all of that? Like, what's happening where you need to carry that around all the time? I'm just saying it's done without it in other countries very successfully, with a lower crime rate all the time, where they don't carry a gun. It's done. So the question is it's a fair question, but I just think the entire it just needs to be abolished. Is what I would, and the people who are in fear of what's going to happen to the police. Believe me,
who are you going to call?
Yeah, come on. If you think 300 plus million people are in line simply because the police are there, come on. They're in line because they want to live in a civilized society, and the vast majority of people believe they should obey rules and laws. That's the reason why there's not enough police to keep 300 plus million people in line. So that's not their use. That's not what they're doing. What they're doing is they're keeping a particular group of people in line for profit value. So anyway, we're moving on to telling you. Let's see what this here. If unions do solidarity strikes, there is no way they can be stopped from doing it. Right. So we're talking laws. I think they're talking laws, not physically being stopped. And I mean, I just got to tell you, I mean, the lens of growing up through Compton, the lens of how I see the world is not through whether it's legal or like, that's just not my first question that I ask when something is done, like a general strike. I'm not thinking like, is it legal? Like, it's not anything that really enters my mind unless somebody brings it up. The legality of something like a general strike is irrelevant to me, to whether or not I'm going to do it. You get what I'm saying? Because that's to me is the whole point. So anyway, so just entertaining those conversations is a bit of a task to me, because the concept is bizarre to me. So what's this here? Mutual aid. What? How? Why? There is a link there. Yes. I'm in heart of the Bible Belt. There are no mutual aid groups close enough to help me, and I can't be the. This is another thing we have to address at the General Strike Summit. These are the types of things we need to address at the General Strike Summit. This person lives in the heart of, that's a typo, I should say, in the heart of the Bible Belt. There are no mutual aid groups close enough. So basically, they live in an area that there's no mutual aid groups close enough. So what does a person like this do in a situation if they're going to participate in a general strike? There needs to be a strategy for that. And this is the reason why I'm saying, like, unless barring a spontaneous event that catapults a general strike based off of passion, that means we have to plan for it. So planning for it means we got to come up with strategies for different groups of people. For example, this person who lives in an area, maybe it's rural, when then there's not another mutual aid that close. So what's the strategy for that template of person? What's the strategy for a person who lives in a state that has laws against sort of striking? What's the strategy for that? Because we have to calculate numbers. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a numbers person. I kind of see everything in numbers. Like, just everything I do, I see in numbers. So we have to kind of talk about those types of things at the General Strike Summit. Let's see if there's any other good comments. We're going to be bringing the show to the end. We want to try to end by 1:30 now. We used to go 2 hours, but because we added that middle show, again, for those who wasn't on earlier, we added another show called Conversations with Leftists. It will premiere today after this show. It's at 5:30 Eastern. And then the New Left podcast has been pushed back by 1/2 hour to 8 p.m. Eastern. And that's also tonight. So just wanted to give that shout out. And that's the reason why we wanted to make sure we end by 1:30 my time, 4:30 East
EST.
Coast time. Yes. Now let's see this here. Universal healthcare takes away employee leverage over employees. It's also a massive tax cut to working folks. As a result, workers. Exactly. Now let's take that first part. Take away leverage. Universal healthcare, because there's so many people that stay with awful jobs or jobs that they absolutely don't like, specifically for healthcare. And I have not a story, but as a person I knew when I worked for AT&T, a cell company, I worked for all the cell companies, every single one at some point. She absolutely hated that job. She was in her late 50s and her husband was in his 60s. He was very ill and she kept the job simply because to keep insurance for him.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
She felt out of
not an uncommon story.
She felt out of her place because this was, this was at the smartphones coming out, and she was like, I don't even want a flip phone. Like, that's where she was coming from, but it was just like, I'm just gonna have to just stick with it. Like, I don't like this job, but my husband has an illness. Like if I don't have this, like, how is he gonna get medical coverage? Nobody's gonna pay him.
Yeah.
So I, it's many stories like that all over the United States. And it's just terrible. So that's the leverage I think we're talking about. Do you have any similar stories or know anyone?
No, I totally agree. I am freaking out about healthcare because I turn 26 next year, and I'm like, what the fuck am I supposed to do?
Yeah, you're
and
off
I'm
your
in
mom's.
grad school. Yeah, I'm off my dad's, and I will not be working because I'm going to be in grad school. So I have absolutely no idea what I will be doing for healthcare next year, and I am terrified.
And you don't deserve it because you're not going to be working. So that's how the United States look at it.
What am I contributing to society?
Right.
I don't deserve anything.
Yeah, you breathe and, you have the same sort of organs as workers, but you don't deserve it. And that's, I mean, just the audacity to say you get health care if you are employed, or if you're at the right employer. Not even all employees get it, but if you're at the right employer, and you bring enough money in for them, basically when they say full-time employment, that means you bring enough money in for the company. They're willing to cover your insurance because we need to keep you healthy to keep working for us. But everybody else is just, you can take this, something else or nothing. So that is a fundamental issue. I think that when we talk about American exceptionalism and we talk about how America is great, that's something that you have to address. That we're the richest. How is it that everybody doesn't have health care? How is it? What is the argument? Is your argument that everybody doesn't need health care? Is anybody's argument that not every human needs health care?
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Is anybody making that argument that you get what I'm saying? Like every human at every stage of their life needs health care. So why isn't that a human right like air, like water? Why?
Well, air and water are also not human rights because we have polluted air and polluted water. And we don't treat housing as a human right either. So why would we treat healthcare as a human right? Even though I believe by the United Nations, they've been deemed healthcare has been deemed a human right. America would not obviously recognize that. So why would we? Because we need it to, we need to have employer linked healthcare to have people working, to have people enlist in the military. to promote the military industrial complex. We need it so people will be desperate enough to commit crimes and then be imprisoned and then give us free labor through the prison and be our slaves now. Yeah.
Right.
So
it's all about keeping people in their destitute situation, or they're keeping people there because the capitalist system needs people there. And we're seeing it now. This is why they took away the unemployment. Like, we need to make people desperate to go back and take these awful low paying jobs. So that's how our system works. Liv, we will need to bring this to a close. We started talking again. We will need to bring this to a close. Again, I'm gonna give Liv. Do you have anything you want to shout out before we go? Before I give the last words here, Liv.
No. Oh, y'all have been amazing. Thanks so much for the comments and for watching today. And please join us later today at 5:30 Eastern and 8 p.m. We have so much more to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Are you on both?
I am if you want me. If I was gonna give up my spot at 8 p.m. if someone else wanted it, but if you want me to MC, I'm there.
Okay. So we'll talk offline about that. So as far as for me, General Strike Summit. That's what I want. I want to focus energy on. A lot of the next upcoming episodes will be talking about general strikes in general, just different topics about it. The other thing, we have Conversations with Leftists coming up at 5:30 Eastern today. Brand new panel, new faces. You may see Liv, maybe the only recurring face you see on that panel, along with me on that panel. And then at 8 p.m., not 7:30, but 8 p.m. Eastern tonight, the new Left podcast and their new time slot will go live also. So join us for all of the shows today. And believe it or not, we may add another one either before this show or even maybe a late night show. I wonder how many people we would get if we stream like 10 Eastern. Like, are there people up that would watch at that time? Yeah, I bet they would. So, all right. So I think that's it. The last question I'm going to answer: can you get Medicaid? You can get Medicaid if you're very poor, but that's the catch-22. And this is what I say when people always say, and I say Obamacare is terrible, but it expands Medicaid. Do you understand that a person has to live in perpetual state of poverty to qualify for Medicaid? So you're saying he expanded something that your person has to be continually in poverty,
living
and you
below
have to
poverty,
right? And you continually have to be reassessed your income. You have to continue to prove that you're destitute, that you're in poverty. You have to continue to do that. So as long as you're willing to be in a perpetual state of poverty, yes, you're able to get Medicaid.
Yep.
So yeah. All right. So I'll end it there. Thanks, Liv, for joining me today. Join us next week for Straight Outta Politics, same time, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific time. Thank you for joining us, and we are signing off.